Deepwater Horizon is a true story disaster thriller directed by Peter Berg. It tells the story of the US's worst ever oil disaster on board an oil rig called the Deepwater Horizon, which basically, due to a case of neglect, turned into Deep Shit Horizon and exploded in a ball of flames, killing 11 people on board. Now let me start this by saying I am a massive fan of 90s disaster epics. Things like Deep Impact, Dante's Peak, Twister. That decade spawned a hell of a lot of those kind of movies, and I really dug them. They had a big audience back then. But over the years, those kind of movies have, well, turned pretty bad, and we've ended up with things like 2012 and San Andreas. And I don't really know what happened, but they've just become really silly. And I know the 90s disaster films, they did have a sense of cheese about them, but they had good characters that we were happy to follow along through the situations, and let's face it, the special effects were often quite good as well. So one thing I didn't expect going into Deepwater Horizon was that this movie seriously reminded me of those great movies of the 90s. I really had that same feeling that I haven't felt in a long time watching one of these kind of movies. And aside from that, the fact that this was actually based on a true story this time around really added something to it. So first and foremost, this movie had a really good script. I dug the characters, they were well written. There was a lot of instances of show don't tell, where for example, when we first meet one of the characters, Andrea, who's played by Gina Rodriguez, we're not told that she's a mechanic. We're shown because she goes out to her car, she tries to start it up, it doesn't work, she goes around, pops open the bonnet and tries to tinker with it, that sort of thing, and straight away we know she's a mechanic. And I loved the relationship between Mike Williams, played by Mark Wahlberg, and his wife Felicia, played by Kate Hudson. I thought the dynamic between them was really believable, and the chemistry between the two actors was spot on, which of course led to a much more emotional movie down the track, because obviously what happens to this guy is tearing her up, and oh my god, there were people crying in the audience by the end of the movie, let me tell you. I was a big fan of the cinematography in the movie as well. It was done in a very realistic way. I think most of it was handheld camera, and it just kind of added to the realism of it. Not only that, the special effects were jaw-droppingly good, which you'd hope for in a movie kind of like this. And when the disaster actually does happen, man, it does not disappoint. It was full on and really puts you in the middle of hell with these people. Adding to all that, the sound design and score were spot on. The score was amazing. It really did a good job of capturing emotion and tension, leading up to the disaster. There were a lot of moments where the score really made you feel something. It really got you right here. And during the actual disaster sequences, yeah, it really enhanced what we were watching. The performances across the board were really good. Mark Wahlberg, it was kind of Mark Wahlberg, but you just like the guy, and that helped to like his character, because when he's in the middle of this absolute hell, you kind of feel for him, and yeah, you want him to get out of there. Kurt Russell was his usual best, but look, I've got to say the standout performance in this for me was John Malkovich as one of the BP executives who was basically responsible for all this happening. Man, you just love to hate this guy. He was such a sleazy creep who just, cared nothing about the people that were on board, and it was all about the mighty dollar and saving some money for the company in order to get this operation going, when they really needed to do some more tests to ensure that it basically wasn't going to explode. So I guess the only things that I could really say that I was against in the film, it's one of those things I'm kind of torn about, because it took a little bit of time to get to the action, but there was some great character building, that sort of thing, but I do think it maybe could have been trimmed down a little bit. And aside from that, I just sort of think that during the actual disaster sequence, one of the things I loved about those 90s movies was that when our characters were in these situations, quite often things would happen. They'd have to really use their brains to try and overcome obstacles, and a lot of time you had characters that would sacrifice themselves for to make sure everyone was safe, that kind of stuff. And this movie didn't really do anything like that. It just kind of, when the disaster happened, it was basically just, let's evacuate, and everyone was sort of getting off board the rig, which I know is more believable, and they were probably adhering to the true story, but I just think maybe they could have made a little bit more of a movie out of it, and just, I don't know, had a few fictitious things going on just to kind of I wouldn't say make it more fun, because it wasn't really a fun situation, but I just think they could have been a little bit more creative about it. But look, overall, like I said, I really dug the movie. It had a lot of tension throughout, some great foreshadowing at the start of the movie as well, which I thought was pretty clever. Great dialogue, good characters, the special effects were top notch, and it had a heart to it. You know, it had some real emotion. So I'm going to give Deepwater Horizon an 8.5 out of 10. So if you're interested in seeing this movie, make sure you check it out on the big screen. It is definitely made for the cinema. And it is absolutely a movie that I'm going to be adding to the collection when it comes out. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again. So guys, if you've seen Deepwater Horizon, let me know what you think of it. Drop me some comments either here or on Facebook. All my social media links are down there. Because I like to talk about movies, and I would love to talk about movies with you. See you next time.
Click subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest movie reviews. Skynet will be taking over any day now, so what have you got to lose? Nyah.